from the Biofortify blog, and with me is Neal Carter from Okanagan Specialty Fruits. Hi Neal, how you doing?
Good morning, Karl.
So you tell me about yourself briefly and about Okanagan Specialty Fruits.
Well, I guess the big thing for us is that my wife and I are orchardists. We grow apples and cherries in Summerland, British Columbia, and that's kind of a little bit different for most presidents of biotech companies because we are full-time farmers. And Okanagan Specialty Fruits is just a small biotech company that's focused on developing new tree fruit cultivars.
Okay, so tell us about the Arctic apple, which everybody's been talking about.
Yeah, well, I certainly are making the news of it, and we're really excited about it. Arctic apples are an apple that doesn't have enzymatic browning. So what that means is we've turned off the polyphenol oxidase enzyme that drives the browning reaction. So this is an apple that's going to be well suited for things like use in fresh cut apple slices or food service. And we're excited because it's going to allow apples to go in a lot of places they currently can't go or don't go because of the need for antioxidants, which are expensive.
So then when you buy, like, let's say a package of fresh cut apples that's been cut, in a factory somewhere, that's been treated with something, right, to keep it from turning brown?
That's right. So now when you buy apple slices, at your grocery store, those are treated with an antioxidant, typically a calcium ascorbate, sometimes calcium ascorbate and citric acid combined. And the unfortunate thing is that product, that input to it, those chemicals are worth just about as much as the apple itself. Oh wow! And so that's what makes the price point a little high on those, and they're competing against baby carrots and other fresh cut products, and they've had some success in retail, but not as much as we would like to see. And we think Arctic apples are going to really help because we won't have the off flavoring and we won't have that chemical treatment, and they can go in the bag and they'll be the great apple you always enjoy.
So one of the things that I thought about, and my wife's also studying dietetics to become a registered dietitian. She actually works at a kids center, and they don't. She has to prepare food at the beginning of the day for the kids who are going to eat it later on as a snack, and she doesn't prepare apples because the apples end up turning brown. And there's all kinds of other fruits that she'll use, but then I kind of thought, well, hey, wouldn't something like this make it possible to put in to chop up some apples and leave them in the fridge, and then kids eat them later in the day, and then they don't look brown?
That's exactly that's exactly what an Arctic apple's all about. Exactly, it's getting rid of that brown yuck factor and making it so people can eat that healthy snack that an apple offers in more ways. And we've had a lot of like grade 2 school teachers write in and saying, oh, we're so tired of all the kids bringing apples to school and then throwing them away because their mom or dad sliced them and wrapped them in saran and put an elastic band around it and really tried to stop the browning, but in their lunchbox it came apart. By the time they open it up, they're all brown and yucky and they get tossed out. And day after day, apples are coming to schools and getting tossed out. And we just think that if we don't like the waste component, kids need those healthy snacks, particularly an apple is a wonderful snack, and making it so that they don't go brown is going to be huge. And really, I use another example of I'm a businessman, I travel quite a bit. I go to a restaurant and they put a basket of bread down. And it's like, I don't want to eat that bread. I don't need to, I don't want to put weight on. But I'm hungry because I've had a busy day. And so maybe we can put apple slices out. At the restaurant they say, you want apple slices or bread? And I think, it's an opportunity to put apples in so many more places, which is, good for the apple industry and I think healthier for the consumer.
So hasn't the consumption of apples in the U.S. gone down in recent years?
Yeah, well, it's long. It's a long period now of steady decline.
About how long?
I think it's at least 25 years. Years go by a little quicker than I hope, but I think it's at least the last 25 years. It hovered for a long time in that sort of 20 pounds per person per year range of fresh apple consumption, and now it's around 16. So that's a very significant decline, and the only reason the apple industry is, still surviving and doing okay is the increased population and opportunity for exports and other things that keep the industry going. And in fact, the apple industry over the last 3 or 4 years has done very well. But irrespective of the fact that the consumption is declining.
I see. So then, if this makes apples a little bit more appealing in kids' lunches, or just giving more opportunities for places for apples to be served, sounds like maybe that could do something to reverse that trend.
Well, that's the hope. And I think that a lot of what's driven the decline is the competition from other snack foods. And unfortunately, an apple comes in a perfect package, so it's all wrapped in a nice skin and everything else. But it's not. It's too big a commitment. People in today will tell us how they don't eat apples because they can't text while they're eating an apple, or I can't drive while I'm eating an apple. And then there's the core. What do I do with the core when I'm finished? And it's sort of unbelievable. But the consumption's declining because there's other competitive products up there, and a lot of those competitive products aren't nearly as healthy as an apple. So not only are we going to try to increase apple consumption, but we're going to get people eating a healthier food.
I was talking to an apple breeder from the University of Minnesota, Jim Luby, and he was saying that he's in direct competition with candy bars for stomach space.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you go into 7-Eleven or something like that, and buy gas, go in for a snack, and you'll see a proliferation of chips and candy bars and you name it, unbelievable amount of stuff there. And 7-Eleven, I give them credit, they do have the basket of apples and maybe a banana and orange, but people look at that and they go, I think I'll go with something sweet and unhealthy, knowing they shouldn't, but they'll do it anyway, right?
Yeah, I think I'm guilty of that.
We all are. Yeah.
So one of the things you talked about here at the Bio Conference was what it's like being a small company in an industry dominated by very large companies. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, we are a small company, no question about that. Currently, we're 7 people. So, very small. And to do what we do, to do the product development work, the regulatory testing, building regulatory data packages, submitting regulatory documents, and then building path for commercialization. For 7 people, this is a pretty huge task. We all run pretty hard, work very hard at it. And we don't really preoccupy ourselves with thinking about the multinationals and what they're doing. They've got their business model, it's very successful for them. I think their shareholders are happy with that, but we know we have to do it differently. We don't have the deep pockets. But we do have an exciting product, and I think that's, to me, what keeps us going. I think that what my real comment on this is it's doable. You don't have to be big. It's hard. You need to be patient, but it's doable. And so if you're passionate about what you're doing and if you've got a great product, figure it out and make it happen. I'd like to see more companies like us out there.
I hope so too. I actually really want to see more diverse, interesting traits coming out, like non-browning apples, like things that change nutritional content of foods, because the discussion has been dominated by it's either BT, it's Roundup, or it's Roundup Ready, and it's all about Monsanto. And then it's, that's just what everybody talks about. But there's so much, it's a technology. It's something you can use to make a trait, and that trait can be just about anything. And it can be made by just about anyone who's got the skills. And
Well, I'll give you an example. Our research manager a few weeks ago was down in Davis, California, and lots and lots of folks that he was meeting with were saying, well, how do you do this? We want to know because they've got something on the shelf, and the question comes up so often is like, would you guys want it? We've got something sitting doing nothing. We want it, and that's just such a shame because typically these are in the specialty crop area, but strawberries and walnuts and all the grapes, and we would love to be doing more, but 7 people, we need to focus, and I think that would be the thing as a small company. You have to focus. There's all sorts of opportunities to do cool science, try the next trait, do other things, but don't do any of that. Get the product in the marketplace because that's what you're there for, and you need to prove it to yourselves, you need to prove it to your shareholders, you need to prove it to the other people who are watching, and maybe that'll encourage them to take the next step.
So, as you understand, there was a protest yesterday, protesting the Arctic apple here at the Bio Convention. I went out and did a brief interview with some of them, took a few photos, and they've been making a few claims about the apples, talking about it's untested and then unlabeled, even though it sounds like it would be putting a label that says Arctic apples, go to our website and stuff on the apple. And then they also have been making claims about pesticides. I thought it would be good to take a little time to address that. So you're talking about the regulatory system, you're talking about all the data that you have to produce. Can you tell us about what you did with regard to the RNAi technology that's used to make this?
Yes, I think the first point I'd make is that Arctic apples will likely be the safest apple in history because it'll be tested beyond anything else in history. The due diligence, the science due diligence that's required to navigate the regulatory process is pretty arduous, and for both FDA and APHIS. And in our case, let's talk about RNAi. Sure, we've used interferon RNA to turn off the polyphenol oxidase enzyme. We've triggered an RNAi mechanism to silence the protein. And I think that the literature supports that this is an ongoing activity, a natural occurring plant activity that it uses as a defense mechanism. And what we've really done is sort of harnessed a naturally occurring plant mechanism to deliver the trait we wanted. So what we're doing really isn't something the plant's not doing all the time anyway. But irrespective of that, we did take our transgene and blast the human genome to see if there was any homology with human genes or any chance that we would be triggering some sort of response in the human digestive system, and the answer to that was no. And we did a similar in terms of our risk assessment for FDA. We did similar work with allergens and anti-nutrients and toxins. You basically, you have to look at all of that to be able to, before the safety evaluation is complete. And so we really feel we've done our homework, and that comments like this are unfortunate, but don't have any basis in real fact. My comment really was to the protest outside, and I did try to get out there to meet them, but I missed them. I tied up in some other meetings, but is that I would have liked to see them inside here, learning about things, and hearing from some great speakers on the real science than staying outside and projecting their messages, which are really led by misinformation.
Maybe you could hold a public info day at your headquarters or something like that. And
our headquarters in the orchard.
Yeah, exactly. Out in the orchard, right in front of the trees.
Headquarters.
Well, they got to be careful. They might come back later with machetes or something. But
the thing is that that we are very open as a company, and we will any one of these protesters, if they have specific questions for us or any kind of questions, please we encourage them to reach out. We're willing to answer all of it.
Yeah, you've got a really good website actually, explaining everything about the apple, and you're on Twitter and everything. And
we tried to engage in that dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, so just so people are clear on what RNAi is, we didn't really go into that in too much detail. I mean, we got a lot of scientists reading our blog, but for everyone else, RNAi is a silencing mechanism. Normally, your genes in all organisms start from the DNA, and then there's a transcript made of that out of a molecule called RNA, and that's just sort of the gene sequence taken out, like it's a little message, and it's called messenger RNA. And then that goes to a different part of the cell where it's used to make the protein, and you get the traits that you're looking at. What RNAi does is you have two complementary sequences of RNA that match up to each other, and they make a double-stranded RNA, just like DNA is double-stranded. And the cell recognizes that, and it actually chops up in little pieces and uses those pieces, which are called microRNAs, or small interfering RNAs, or all kinds of little fun terms for them. And it uses to go back and turn off the genes that match it. So I think, you have like you're sort of overexpressing the normal gene?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so yeah,
basically a plant reads it in, so it sees the manipulation we made at the DNA level, and at the RNA level say, this isn't right, this is what we're expecting. It triggers these dicer enzymes that chop it into little bits.
Dicer's one of my favorite enzymes.
Yeah, they then go and they will suppress that. Basically, out of that, the protein that we target and turn off doesn't get produced.
Yeah. So the worry has been that humans, we're finding, also have some RNAi going on, and if you were to eat a food that had some new double-stranded RNAs, and if it somehow got into our own cells, and then if the little small things are moving around, maybe it might silence one of our genes. So you said that you blasted, and that's a term for just basically searching for matches, like searching for matching words in a Word document. But it's a bit more sophisticated than that, trying to find if there are any gene sequences
It's a big database.
that match. You can take any sequence you want and blast it against the human genome and others if you know where to go. But yeah, so you essentially went and looked and found, took your sequence and looked to see if there were any matches, and you didn't find those kinds of matches. So then basically you're not going to have it doing anything to us through that mechanism.
Sort of, the untargeted response. You can be assured that didn't happen because there really is no mechanism for it to happen anymore. Yeah.
Okay, so the other claim that the protesters are making, they're talking about pesticides, and they're coming from an organic perspective. And they were talking about, well, conventional apples are disgusting and covered with poison already, but then this new apple, because it turns off this enzyme, they're claiming that it helps the plant fight off plant pests, so therefore, if anybody grows an Arctic apple, they're going to have to spray more pesticides. So what do you think about that?
Well, first off, I'm an orchardist, and I grow apples, a lot of apples, about 1 million pounds of apples a year, and we spray as little as possible because every time we spray it costs us money. And Arctic apples have been in the ground for 10 years and have had various spray regimes used on them as would be used in a conventional orchard, and have shown absolutely no increased susceptibility to plant pests or disease. So they behave exactly like their parent. And that kind of data is the type of thing that was submitted to APHIS for their environmental assessment. And we have reams and reams of data that that are evidence that they behave exactly like the parent. I think the really a point I'd like to make is that people think that organic apples aren't sprayed, and that's just completely false. Organic apples are sprayed just like conventional apples. They just put different materials in their spray tank, and a lot of times they're the same materials. A BT type spray or a spinosad based type spray for pest control. For fungal control, a conventional grower will likely use a synthetic fungicide. These are typically an eradicant, and they won't spray until they have to.
So an eradicant is something you'd spray on it when the disease shows up.
Yeah, so you've got the disease, boom, you spray and it kills it off. In an organic orchard, they can't use synthetic fungicides, so particularly they will use mostly sulfur. And in that case, it's a safe, good control tool. But they have to use it as a protector. And so really the opposite is true. Organic apples, particularly in the eastern part of the United States, are sprayed more than conventional apples. Because there are organic apple orchards that I've visited in New York State and Vermont and New Hampshire where they've been sprayed 15 and 18 times a year with sulfur to control apple scab. And so, I take issue with that comment. Arctic apples aren't sprayed more. Conventional apples aren't sprayed with deadly pesticides. Nowadays, everybody has a very soft spray program. Everybody, the residue levels on apples are highly regulated. We have, pre-harvest, days before bloom, and days before reentry, and days before harvest type criteria that we have to meet. We're all part of growing certification programs like Global Gap or other good agricultural practices certification programs, and we have auditors come into our farms to check that we have spray records and evidence that everything was sprayed well. So really that comment about spraying and the whole safety of pesticide use in the apple business, I think, is unfounded.
One of the things that I worry about this is that there are a lot of people who would like to buy organic but they can't afford it, and when people make claims that various conventional fruits and vegetables are unsafe to eat, then what's somebody going to do? They're going to go and buy a bag of chips or something like that rather than eat an apple. I actually asked one of the protesters, because they were talking about McDonald's and apple slices in McDonald's, and I'm like, well, if you go to McDonald's, you got a choice between apples and French fries. The French fries are cooked in genetically engineered oil, and let's say the apples are genetically engineered. Which would be better for someone to eat? And so they didn't want to answer because they knew that the answer was going to be probably a genetically engineered apple versus French fries, because they know that's loaded in fat and starch and all that. It's probably really not good for you to eat very many of them. So it's like, will this drive people, the way this approach drive people to away from fruits and vegetables, this kind of rhetoric? I worry about that.
Well, I think most protesters have an agenda of some sort, and driving. If you're a pro-organic protester, you're likely going to be trying to drive people to the organic category. But the interesting thing is that organic apples and conventional apples really don't sell at different prices. And I was a couple of times in different packing sheds this past winter, and organic fruit was coming into the packing shed and running over the line, and out of that organic fruit, supply chain that came out of the bin of fruit, it was going into boxes, and I think like 2 boxes were organic and the rest were conventional. So an enormous amount of organic fruit gets sold as conventional because of the fact that the oversupply of fruit and the undersupply of demand, and lots of times it'll sell at the same price. So everybody has their choice, and if they do worry about pesticides, these apples are all washed in the packing shed, and if they're still not happy, they can certainly wash them in the home. And just washing it under the tap and wiping it off, that's going to give them the peace of mind they're looking for. That's something they can do, and I would say that is the same whether it's organic, conventional, or whether it's going to be Arctic.
Yeah, I mean, there can be bacteria on the surface of apples. So you should wash it anyways, no matter where it came from in your backyard.
And if you look in the packing shed, they get washed. Many apples get waxed also. Organic apples get waxed with an organic wax, so that they've looked at it at the time. But in the supply chain, there's quite a lot of handling steps. And so, sure, you get it home, give it a wash.
Yeah. So then where can people find more information?
Well, yeah.
About Arctic apples.
Encourage them to come to arcticapples.com, our consumer website. Our Okanagan Specialty Fruits.com website is sort of more about the company and what we're doing and other pipeline products. In terms of the Arctic apple, we have the arcticapple.com site, and I think that we've done we work really hard to make that site interesting and update it a lot. Have a lot of new blogs that we post, and the blogs are usually selected to address things that are sort of coming up at the time. So if we're getting lots of questions coming in on a topic, we'll do a blog on that. Or if we're heading towards a public comment period, we'll do a blog about what that means and what we're hoping to achieve.
Are you heading toward one right now?
We are. We have heard that the second public comment period, this is a 30-day public comment period for Arctic apples, should start sometime around the middle of May or late May. And run through to, I think the goal was to have it finished by the end of June, so I'm thinking likely it's not going to start till the late May and then run through June. And so I think we have a blog ready to go on that, and kind of waiting for it to get published and to actually happen. We've had a number of times where the APHIS has told us it's going to happen and it didn't, and told us a new date and didn't, and kind of get.
But I thought they were in the biotech industry's pocket and doing whatever they said.
Yeah, not in our pocket. I think that to us, the regulatory people really they march to their own drum, and so we do whatever happens, and then there's not much we can do to change that.
So then, let's say they get approved for growing and for selling. When might somebody be able to find an Arctic apple in the future?
Yeah, that's something we're pretty excited about. Well, right now our planning is based on trees going around in the ground next spring. Again, it's not going to be like the GM sugar beet or something where 500,000 acres are planted the first year. We're talking about
trees are a little slower.
20 acres the first year, and then maybe another 50 the next year. And for us, really, the supply of trees, people typically plant 1,000 trees or more per acre. So you need 20,000 trees to do 20 acres, or more than that likely. So we've only speculated in sort of growing a certain number of trees. We want to see people who are ordering the trees and putting a deposit down and that kind of stuff, and that's starting to happen now. We have quite a lot of interest, and I think that for 2014 we will plant every tree we produced, and then maybe some we'll do some bench grafting and maybe grow some up in a greenhouse or something. And so 2014 trees will go in the ground. Out of that, 2015 we'll see some small amounts of fruit, but with the emphasis on small. You know, we would be lucky if we had enough fruit to go into 5 stores for 2 weeks or something like that, right? And so people can't expect to see Arctic apples, you know, boom in every Safeway in the U.S. or something. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be a very slow rollout. Probably go into some specialty produce stores initially. People who are interested in having the latest, greatest new thing, and then we would like, of course, to have it head into the hands of some fresh cut companies to give it a try, and other food service companies, and so it'll slowly trickle out, and we'll build the market share from there.
I see. And
It'll never represent more than probably just a few percent of the total apple industry for many
for
years.
any variety. Yeah. But I mean, you can basically put this trait in just about any variety.
Yeah.
And
we're working on 6 right now.
And I'm hoping someday maybe we can see some backyard trees possible, because, you know, who knows? Get your own little apple tree in your backyard and have some non-browning apples at home.
yeah, well, and that'll happen. You know, it's all in good time. But it's, you know, that is the plan, to make these widely available. It's not going to be a variety treated like we have in the industry now. We have what's called club varieties. These are very highly managed varieties. These will be managed varieties more because we want to manage the trait, and we want to manage the germplasm, because of, you know, stewardship obligations that we feel, it being new and it being genetically modified, we want to have sort of stewardship a little higher than it currently exists in the industry. But as that kind of rolls out and people get used to it and it becomes more normalized, well then sure, let's get it in the backyard of folks and have it. Now we better point out the apple you have there.
Yeah. Before we go, I took a bite of a regular apple before we did the interview, and it's turned brown. So, you know, the browning isn't unsafe, but, you know, it looks kind of gross, and a lot of people don't want to eat that.
Well, what people don't realize is actual browning is taking away the nutrients. You know, the reaction itself is the enzyme reacts with the polyphenols, and the polyphenols are the good part. And so you can leave an apple out for half an hour and then come back to it, but the antioxidant level of that apple is probably about half of what it was, and the vitamin C level is about half as what it was, because they were consumed in the browning reaction. So not only does an Arctic apple not go brown, but it's preserving the substrate, so it's preserving those polyphenols.
So there you go. That's why they brown, and that's why you're trying to stop it.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Neal, for your time.
Thanks, Karl.
And hope to talk to you again someday.
Yeah, well, I'm always available.
And bye.